I know you guys are going to be seeing this video. I just want to say, this is a video I've been wanting to do for a while. If you guys see different time jumps with me with different outfits and it seems to be a different day, it's because it's taken me a while to do this video. There's a lot of notes to take down. Hopefully it's not cutting off my head. However, this is a video I've been wanting to do quite a while. Now there's going to be different parts to this. This is a theory video on what I think the Blairwitch might be, and there's a lot of evidence, pointing this out. And we're going to start, obviously, first with the story behind the Blairwitch, where it came from, the inspiration, the actual event that took place with this to lead up to getting the first movie in 1999. From there we got 3 PC games that are canon to the story, even going as far as such as the Blairwitch, the Book of Shadows, which I have seen the original take that the director wanted to go for. But that will be in discussion by the time we get to the movies. So the mythology, the actual story with the Blairwitch, because things are too realistic to happen, and our world, there's a lot of things you cannot dismiss out, because there's a whole open world up there that we have yet to find and explore, and some things, are best to be left alone. They really are. They are best to be left alone, without a doubt. Because of that, when something happens that's so real, people don't want to talk about it, but eventually it gets out there, and after a while, it dies down. In Baltimore, Maryland, and the town of Blair, which they have changed the name to, in real life, there was a town named Blair. Now, it was on the other side of town that we could get with the movies. Now, going into that, going back to the natives, there was always talk about lights in the sky, creatures within the woods. Yes, you had the plague during the time as well, going into the, I guess what would be considered the Victorian era, which we will start there. Yes, you had kids that were missing. Yes, you actually had a woman who was actually accused of witchcraft, even though she studied to be a doctor. Back in those days, women couldn't work. They couldn't run for mayors, presidents. They couldn't be pastors or doctors. They could be housewives or nurses. That's about the only options, plus even teachers. The kids made up the story because no one liked this woman because she wanted to be a doctor. So she definitely got killed of being assumed as a witch who studied black magic when she didn't. Now, during the time of that, after some time, skipped, I would say maybe after World War I at the most, yes, you had kids that went missing. Even after World War II, to be exact, you had kids that actually went missing and got killed. There was a guy named Rustin Farr who actually committed, those in particular crimes. He did say voices in his head that were telling him to do this. There has been lore of things that are not from this world that have been known to do that. Also, I guess the intelligence to play on mythological things. Back in those days, especially in Baltimore in the Victorian era, there was a lot of women who were accused of witchcraft and attempt to be demons doing this, or spirits that couldn't rest. If you go back to, I guess, the days of Christopher Columbus, when they discovered or stole this new land from Long Island to Baltimore, Maryland, there were a lot of deaths of a lot of natives that were buried face down. And what that means, it means their soul would never be able to cross into the other side of heaven. So their spirits, our souls, are left to wander the earth as ghosts, which did anger them. So you know, around that time, yes, you did get these stories and people, you know, added to it, but, you know, the Blair Witch story within itself, you know, happened to an extent. Is it anything like we see on the movies? Of course not. No, it's not. You know, that's Hollywood. But there is truth to it, and yes, you know, over 50 kids were buried in that town in actual real life. Hopefully I'm in the frame and I'm in the lens. Hopefully my head is not cut off either. I'm not going to know until I see the footage. So here we begin with the first topic. Not even the first topic, but discussion. A bit of the first review, going into some of the theories, because we're going to be starting from the third game that definitely takes place. And where's the data? Because sometimes I can barely read my own handwriting, by the way. In 1786, even though this is the last introduction in the game series as of right now, but note to self and note to y'all, we actually will be getting another Blairwitch game in 2020, so that's definitely going to add to the story and definitely add into the canon of the story. So the first title of this game is going to be called The Evilwood Tales. It's a PC game. You know, it takes place in Baltimore, Maryland in 1786. Our character's name is going to be Jonathan. You know, a lost pastor who lost his way and is looking to find who he is now, who takes a trip to Blairtown. The people of Blairtown leave because of the death of the children. The motivation for John is to fight the witch, who is a witch hunter. Now, John, he became a witch hunter after he left the church, if you will. So, we do get our story about, you know, Eelwood. Ellie Eelwood, to be exact, who was found guilty of witchcraft and tied to a wheelbarrow, not a tree. So, you know, we heard the story how she was tied to a tree, and then in part 2 we get that she was tied to a wheelbarrow. And we have been getting that, you know, not just in part 2, but also hearing about her get tied to a wheelbarrow within the third movie as well. Also, you hear about this within another movie that came out after the first one called The Curse of the Blair Witch. You know, says she was found guilty for practicing witchcraft, and it even says in the game for her drawing blood. Now, it goes into a lot of that in detail in the second movie. Again, we're not going to get to the movies after we get through these games, you know, or the theories of these and what it will all add up to. And a lot of people saying that she drew their blood because I guess they did have illnesses. Our next person that we would get would be Elizabeth. Elizabeth is locked up accused of being a witch, lying on the floor of the Eelwood house. And we will get to her and how of a role that she plays. We do get our town drunk, but he's barely any help. So, who was Elizabeth? Elizabeth, within this game, was studied to be a witch. Somebody who did study to do black magic. Somebody who got brainwashed into being a slave to work for the entity behind all of this and what she turns into. The first things that we get in this game is we get zombies. Zombies. Are zombies a part of the Blairwitch universe? I'm going to say yes, we got zombies in this game. This ain't going to be the first time. Now, those that don't know, zombie and witches, they definitely go hand in hand. Those that don't know, witches used to raise the dead to use them as their slaves. Now, let's see what else. Now, Ellie, who did not kill the kids, so we do get that within the story of someone saying she did not kill his kids. Again, this isn't the first time we would hear about this at all. It would not be the first time. From there, we also get the backstory a bit into these woods. We do. We get the backstory of them, you know. We get kids who went to Coffin Rock, and a man's voice who deepens. We heard the story about Coffin Rock earlier, before the sacrifice that took place at Coffin Rock. We also get a voice that deepens. It sounds a bit like a man's voice. Without the killing of these zombies, red crystals fall out. Now, what I believe those red crystals to believe, they look like power gems. Something to power ships, something to power technology, something to power a lightsaber. Could this be something to power the dead within the Blairwitch universe that caused the mythological lore within the Blairwitch universe for zombies? To me, that sounds a bit like aliens. Going on a bit further within this game, our pastor runs into three weird things that stick out to me the most. A weapon-like cross that shoots energy. His first monster that he runs into looks like an alien, but you couldn't see him at first. It looks like he has some kind of invisible cloaking device. And then some kind of weird alien-like box. To me, that really points out to the alien. We get more stories of the woods about this dark spirit named Hermex, and we also get wolves. This is interesting because the natives talk about a spirit named Hermex all throughout three of these games. Hermex. And I'm going to tell you who I believe who Hermex might be. Going into this, we hear about portals, which breaks the question, you know, within these games, as people go into these woods, it tends to be crossing into another dimension, a portal where time doesn't exist, where technology seems to stop that we've seen in the movies, which explains why they can never find the house. I believe what this is to be alien tech of some sort to cross into portals. It sounds much like aliens. Also, who Hermex might be. Within some of these wild battles, a lot of these creatures that we run into to fight have nothing to do with witchcraft, have nothing to do with demonology. Even some of the handwritings that run into tend to look alien-like. I believe what we are fighting in this game are to be aliens, to be exact. Are to be just that, is to be aliens. The creatures that Emily turns into, or Elizabeth turns into, she turns into a gigantic tree or some kind of gigantic monster. Again, something that we've seen in part 3. The priest takes the crystal to help him turn into a monster as well to fight this monster-like woman who is not even a witch, but somebody who is being used by Hermex. And we hear about this before, that the witch uses certain people, or it seems to be the lore of the witch to use certain people to do Hermex's bidding. So a lot of this seems to be pointing out that we have zombies, that we have power gems, we have portals, we have why the house cannot be found, a person named Hermex, and seems to be alien technology. By the time you guys see the other clip, I will be giving you guys the second half to this theory, and it will be called The Legend of Coffin Rock. So, we begin now with the second part of this, or really the third part of the Blairwitch theory. I will be talking about the second game called The Legend of Coffin Rock. It's not a long game, it doesn't really touch or focus on anything in particular. There are some things that do stand out that I do want to talk about. So, we get in the first, the first part of the opening scene, we get the Coffin scene that we got from the movie, where Heather was talking about the 5 men, and the 5 men is actually 6. So we get confirmation and confirmation in the second game that it's really 6 men and not 5. The 5 to 6 men, really 6, like I said, do actually end up getting killed and tortured by what looks like an alien entity. The timeline where this takes place at, because it does jump in time, we begin out as a Civil War soldier. He has no name, but we call him Lazarus, and that was the nickname he was given, because when we're first introduced to Lazarus in this game, he's waking up from being, I guess, knocked out. We don't know. The game takes place within the Civil War from 1781 to 1883. So around there, in that time frame. Within the beginning, we get a voice of an old woman talking to Lazarus as he's knocked out. Now, the witch uses people. Yeah. This has been, again, we've seen this before. The witch uses people. The first time we've seen this was actually in the first Blairwitch movie. So, when Josh disappeared, I believe he ran into the witch, or an alien of an entity of some sort pretending to be the witch, right? Now hear me out here. This is where my theory kicks in with the using people. I believe Emily Wood, right, the woman accused of being the witch of the Blairwitch, was saved by these aliens, but turned into a monster because they talk about her arms and her legs being tied out with rocks and out. Turned into a creature, experimented on. I believe that's what Josh ran into. And she brainwashed to play mind games with Josh, so he could use his friends to lower them so they could be killed. I believe Josh knocked out Heather. The second time we would see this would be in the Blairwitch Book of Shadows, which focused on the entity aspect, and I will go in more depth within the Book of Shadows when we get to that point. The third time we would see this would be in the third Blairwitch movie with that redneck young kid. He was being used by whatever entity to lure in these victims. I believe the creature that we saw was Heather, who was stretched out, but no longer Heather. That makes sense. We hear about the story about arms coming out of the water and taking a girl from the lake, pulling her down. You know, we hear about that in the first Blairwitch movie. We also hear the story of this as well. It seems to be there's a family that's close to Emily Inglewood that focuses on in this game, but not so much to the point where it wants to leave you kind of like, okay, I think they might be related. We hear about this grandmother losing 2 children, 2 of them, due to whatever. You know, again, we heard about a man grabbing a little girl from the first movie and then just disappearing. To me, that sounds alien-like, like another dimension, a portal. Then here's a theory that would probably make sense of how to survive. In this game, you run into an old hermit who's a blind man who built a house in the Black Hills forest of this game. So he goes back and forth between the woods and living on the tracks. He can't see anything, but he hears a lot of stuff. A lot of his senses is what helps him survive. Now, he doesn't believe a lot of these tales, or at least he doesn't. We do run into him in the game several times, talk to him. He's a bit of an asshole. But what if the way to survive the Blairwitch, or whatever goes on in those woods, because it does say, if you look at it, you see it, or the creature, the alien, the entity, whatever it is, you die. What if we get a 4th movie, the way to survive is to not see, is to be blind, or go into the direction like the Bird Box went into to be blind. I think they might go into that game, we get what kind of looks like a rock. Not even a rock, kind of like some kind of craft-looking machinery disguised as a rock that has like a glowing green crystal. Around the area where the guys died, they died from an entity of a glowing substance. And again, this all seems to be pointing out to be aliens. It really does. So my theory here to this is, one, we do know this kept happening during the World War. A lot of soldiers went missing. The entities of the aliens is to use people to turn them into creatures. Again, there's a lot being shown here that there are portals. Portals where people get abducted to. And then a way to survive this is to go into the bird box itself, to be blindfolded. Again, not too much here with this one. My next entry, which will definitely be the fourth entry to this. Actually, no, we have three, because we got the first one. We just talked about the second one. So it's going to be the third one, which is going to be the first Blairwitch game that goes into a lot. And I mean a lot. I will be taking down notes and certain things that do stand out to me. So, again, I hope you guys are enjoying this so far. Because I'm really going to be looking more into this type of theories and diving into dissecting it the best I can to my ability and to make sense of it and what I truly believe, what is the actual problem. And we also hear about, again, dark spirit called hermits. I believe hermits is an entity like alien that is playing on the mythological part to witchcraft. And this ain't the first time that we've seen magic and science come together. We've seen this in the Thor movies. So that's really something to think about. So with that, again, I hope you guys are enjoying this, and I will see you guys in the third entry.
I ended up picking up a different camera for like $5. So, this is going to be the first half of the Blairwitch 1 game called Rust and Par. We will be discussing 9 things. This is going to be the longer one in the series of this discussion that we will be doing. So, the name of this one is called Rust and Par. I talked about Rust and Par within the actual lore of the person himself in the first half or in the beginning of this video. And we first begin off with a secret society that fights monsters and deals with zombies. Which is interesting because it seems zombies play a part in this. And one of the questions I have about this secret society, you know, what happened to them? Because the games do tie in to the Blairwitch movies, so everything is canon. Well, we can speculate, we can theorize, which is really great to do. If I were to guess what happened to them, did they get shut down? If they're supposed to be secret, did somebody come in? Because we do have a character who calls himself Stranger that talks about they need to change their password. It's too predictable. One of these days somebody's going to come in and that's going to be the end of it. Is that something that may have happened? We don't know. Do they keep monsters when they train their new agents? Yes, they do. Did the monsters break out? Is the question. We don't know. You know, it was founded in 1862. It was founded in 1862. The timeline with which the game sets in is going to be around 1940 to 1941. So definitely takes place within the early 40s. Our two characters that we get introduced to Doc Holliday and Stranger. We follow the game throughout a woman that calls herself Doc Holliday. Now, the story of Rushton Parr, which they got into. We talked about that, and one of the things that is brought up in this, within most of the first half, vampires. Are vampires also a thing within the Blairwitch universe? And if so, why? I have no idea. I couldn't tell you why. Rushton Parr is somebody who turns out to be a drunk. And again, with the story that actually happened to Rushton Parr, he was a real guy that did kidnap children and kill them. His story is real. He does claim that an old woman who he was talking to, and he would hear voices in his head telling him to do this. And in the game, he's set free, so he's not really waiting any trial. So there's that. Now, we get to talk about Robin Reaver. Those who don't remember Robin Reaver, she's the old woman that we seen in the Blairwitch 1 when she's talking about with fur. We really didn't get much of her story. She really wasn't mostly brought up in this, but she was around till the 1940s, which does bring up the question, how old is this woman that we seen in the first movie? What is her actual connection to the woods, to Blairwitch? And this is interesting. I do believe Robin Weaver might be the cure, or the person that people need to turn to, because we do get another little girl in the second game. Her name is Robin. And then we hear about Robin Weaver. Again, it's a female character. Then we hear about the same woman in the first movie, which is interesting. So, what is her actual connection? Because they really wanted to kind of hide and steer from things. Is she the person to stop Hermex? And we will get to talk about Hermex within maybe the second part to the third part of this video, because again, the Rushton Parr chapter is the first one, and it is one of the longer ones. And if Robin Weaver is an actual survivor, how and what happened? That's something that really needs to be focused on. Now, we go into topic 7. Is Rushton Parr house and the Blair house the same house? It's interesting. We get to, in the actual reality story, the house that we've seen, and in the Blairwitch 1 movie, that was a real house. The actors' reactions were real. If you guys go behind the scene footage, they did not know about that house. It really was Rushton Parr's house. He really did kill 7 kids. A lot of people may think it might be more than 7 kids throughout his murder spree that he was doing. And the house was torn down. Now, if you watch part 2 of the Book of Shadows, right, watch the director's cut, the original one that's up on the website, because that's the real movie. And again, we'll talk about that when we get to the movies, about the Blairwitch movies. But in the first part, they sent out the search party. They couldn't find the house. We see the ruins of Rushton Parr's house in the second movie, and they said, well, no, this is Rushton Parr's house. This isn't the Blair house. Is the Blair house and Rushton Parr house is the same house? And when you can't find the house, is it because that it turns into the ruins, those that are trying to search for it, that gives them another reality into the portal when they cross into those woods. I believe it is the same house. I believe Reston Park found the Blair house from the third game. Of course, it was modified over the years, and stayed in that house to do Hermex's bidding until he was done with him. And that those that can't find the house is because it goes to like ruins, since they said this house was torn down. So I do believe those houses are the same house. It is interesting. The 8th discussion would be, can the spirits or / aliens hear what goes on in the town? Throughout this game, within the first 35-40 minutes, we get a scene, not kind of a scene, but a playthrough of a scene. We hear noises in this woman's hotel. She opens the door from her room that leads into, I think, the living area of the time. We see what looks like she couldn't see anything, but she heard, because there was a door slamming, and of course a knock of somebody trying to get into a room. We see what looks like kind of like an alien-like creature that used cloaking to run past, and then we do get mention of I think he's like I can't remember the character. I think like a clerk or something that said, look, you can't mention these type of things here in this town. It can hear you, or they can hear you. The witch can hear you. The woods can hear you. So that's interesting, because if these entities or these aliens, to me, I think they are aliens, and this is what a lot of things are pointing out to be. If this is true, then that means the disappearances over the years with these entities that can be sent out throughout the woods and drag people in them in town without anybody noticing, without having to go into the woods. And they can also hear. So that is interesting. I do believe so. The 9th discussion is going to be turned into zombies. Our character, Doc Holliday, she runs what seems to be kind of like the holding cell to the sheriff's office. We see the sheriff looks like to be zombified and tries to kill her. She ends up putting him down, which then definitely begs the question, how do they turn into zombies? Is this, again, and I talk about these in one of the earlier clips, you know, with science that meets magic. And again, for history lesson, you know, zombies and witches do go hand in hand, because back in the really earlier times, you know, if you heard about a witch raising the dead people, it's because she was using them as slaves. Even some of the old silent black and white movies to the black and white movies that end up developing sound, you know, they have old zombie movies, but along with it is to stop like this witch that has the dead as slaves. So even going into the Thor movies, right, kind of like example again, you know, mixing science with magic. And again, I do believe this Hermex creature entity is an alien of some sort that learned to use these things that he learned from his planet, ended up turning these things into mythological creatures that would be real, from zombies to witches to demons, that also seen the creation of Jesus himself within the Blairwitch universe, and then uses these things to frighten people to feel whatever he's doing, and that he may have some kind of power, some sort, to turn people inside of town without going into the woods into zombies. And you know, again, this is just the first half of this topic. You know, we haven't really scratched the surface yet at all. And I know one of the questions, again, that's going to be probably asked, if this is the case, then where are the zombies in the movies? Why haven't this been discovered yet? And we will talk about that when we go through all 4 movies. I say 4 because there's actually a 4th middle one. It came after part 1. It's called The Curse of the Blairwitch, which is mainly just lore and the legend and actual stories behind this movie to be made. And again, you know, I talk about some things that happen in certain towns in certain states here in the U.S. or even across seas. Some things happen so badly that it's so real that people don't want to talk about it. Now, they had to put the statement out many years ago when this movie came out, oh, that it's not real after the interview. The truth is, the Blairwitch story is very real, just like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre story is very real. But because it was too real, people in those towns, you know, they don't like to talk about it because it happened. But again, I might actually skip the Curse of the Blairwitch topic. It is on YouTube, like 50 minutes, 48 minutes long. So we are just going to focus in on the movie parts themselves and then I think about it. But again, you know, we'll get to that discussion. You know, if these creatures are in this game and supposed to be connected in this universe, within the movie universe, and what happened to them. You know, we'll theorize about that when it comes. And again, this is just the first half of it, because this is the longer one out of the bunch to cover, and there is a lot to go through. And again, we'll get to that. So, with that being said, man, I'm gonna leave now with this first part already discussed and done. We are actually inside. It is actually Saturday during the filming of this clip. So there is that, and I'm out. Okay, so here's the third one. There wasn't very many notes to take because a lot of it does begin to wrap down to, I guess, your usual ending, middle game type of stuff that does happen. And those, there's only 3 things, again, that really stuck out to me because, like I said, the rest of it is just going to be normal gameplay type of stuff and dialogue. So we do get, I don't really want to say get, but I think what might, with the stick figures of what they might be in the Blairwitch. So, as you guys already know from the second video, we get it pretty much this medicine man, this spiritual man who is in this dimension. And from what I gathered from the timeline that a lot of these games takes place in, you have to be open-minded. And he talks about the stick figures. The stick figures are used for fighting whatever evil is in those woods, but to add magic to it, right? Or some kind of power to it, and that will help you see the house. Now, do I believe that those stick figures were used for evil in the movies? Yes. But at the same time, why did they appear to begin with? And are they there? Did they appear to lure the people to the house? Because with those stick figures, it seems like to me, and in this game, this woman, she used the stick figures so she could see the house, the Blairwitch house. I do believe those sticks were used over time in the movies to use for mainly evil, because the medicine man may not be around anymore in that dimension. I don't know. And then we get the story of the woods, that there was an evil that existed long before man. Now, we seem to get a rainstorm, a thunderstorm, and what looks like to be a crash in these woods. A crash in the woods. We tend to seem to get some kind of black mist that takes place in these woods, again, before the creation or before man. So this kind of goes to the dinosaur age, right? Again, not much else to really explain, but I think another thing that sticks out to me is that escape these woods. And when you pass away outside of that dimension, does your soul, your spirit, get took or trapped in that dimension if you die outside of it? I say that because the man in the third game appears in this one, but as like a ghost of some sort. I don't know. To me, that's what it seems like. So with that one, again, this one ain't too much longer. So within our next part of this, we will be getting into the movie part that will tie in to the games and the conclusion to what I think might be the Blairwitch, and also share what we could be seeing if we ever get a fourth film. Okay, so now we get into the topic of the movie. So let's start with the first movie. Now, was there no witch to begin with? That's the question. So, let's start with the first one. Was there no witch to begin with? I'm going to say there was no witch to begin with. However, we see Josh in this movie become a bit more strange, a bit more weird, to where he was going crazy. I believe that because he was hearing voices by a hermit who was making this happen to him. Throughout the video, we do get discussions about a lot of things that some of these games focus on and sometimes not focus on as well. So, to go back to the beginning, actually, matter of fact, that's a good one. Let's go back to the beginning. To go back to the beginning of this. To go back to the beginning, right? They want to do research on the Blairwitch, but it was also a school project as well for Heather. The lady, the older lady, is the same little girl from the second game of Blairwitch. Also goes into why and how she lived so long, because I believe she has answers to how to defeat the Blairwitch. How did she survive the woods? From there, we hear a story about Coffin Rock. We see the murder or the massacre of Coffin Rock that was caused by a creature in the third game. Also goes into the second game as well, the Legend of Coffin Rock. Coffin Rock, to me, is not just a sacrifice place, but a power source that feeds off the blood of humans. Because we get this round below, like I said in the game, that seems to be too alien-like. We hear about the story of the little girl who got pulled into the water by a hand that came up. The rocks are also mentioned, and then this is where we get to it. The rocks were mentioned. What about the rocks? Again, I think the rocks are beacon signals of some sort. Say, hey, we have some people. From there, we get the beating of the tent in the first movie. I think the beating of the tent, or the souls that got took over to get the victims out of the tent to run into the woods. They stumble onto the house because now, when they're in this Black Hill Forest, they're now in the dimension. Throughout this part, they never found Josh. I believe Josh was being used as a puppet to kill Heather, then to kill his friend. Because we never get no mention of Josh in the second movie, which is interesting. I believe once Hermex is done with somebody who he wants to use, he sets them free. And I believe Josh may have gotten captured. Captured as in arrested, because because to me I think he does have the answer down. Why haven't we seen the stick figures come to life in this movie? Why haven't we seen zombies of some sort? Why haven't we seen these power crystals? Because over time, the woods became just that, a myth and a legend. So no more people stopped going into the woods, so it died out. And a lot of stories changed about it from what we gathered in the movie. Why no more the abduction of children? Because over time, nobody really wants to go into the woods anyways, so it became more of just that, stories, just woods. From there, we go into the second movie, The Book of Shadows. But before I begin there, I want to begin a bit with part one. So let's kind of go back a bit. I don't have my notes with me, so we are going to be jumping around. I just want to point that out. We will be jumping around. Something that was captured during filming that I think a lot of us missed. In the shot where they were leaving the car that I seen on YouTube, somebody was slowing down the footage, and it's creepy, and I actually recommend anybody to find this video. I think there might actually, again, in the first part of this video that I first made, I talk about the lore and the real story behind the Blairwitch, which leads into the first film, because when you're filming things, you never know what you might capture on screen, and these are things that are going to be captured by accident, if you ask me. Things are going to be captured by accident. Within the scene where they're leaving the car in the first one, and again, this video's on YouTube, somebody slowed it down in different frames, you can see a couple of faces pop up from the car where that dark big tree is. You can see that. And that's interesting. That's interesting because I feel like those may be actual, victims or spirits that what actually happened in real life. That plays into the myth and the lore and some of the stories that we hear about in these games, even in the movies. From part two, we actually get some bit of stuff like that as well. And the uncut version of it, the director's cut, the actual version, and somebody did a review and online, you see certain letters and things pop up in those films if you really pay attention, things that were never planned out, but when they were saw, they took them out of the theatrical version, which is interesting because we hear about that place being a World War II building. We never hear much stories about World War II in the movies during that time, even along with the Blairwitch or the Black Hills. Because I believe, with World War II being with what it was in real life, I can imagine something like that in that area would not be accurate. We get the place where they're at, Rushton Parr's house, a place that was torn down in real life, which again, what I also believe is that will also be the Blairwitch house as well. Why it was torn down, or why it looked to be torn down, is because they haven't activated maybe a beacon, or they haven't found the stick figures with what they need to find for the house to appear in a portal of a dimension. Because of that, we get to see trickery of the mind games, to where they're seeing what's going on to them in a certain area of a certain dimension of time, if you will, right? And in the end, we see that they committed these crimes. So they were being used as puppets to sacrifice these people so they can try to bring energy to hermits from the woods. We get the mention of Heather. We get the mention of Rushton Parr's house. We get them being took out of their bodies, I do believe. Again, playing the trickery, playing the mind game, because they don't know what their bodies are doing. They're only seeing what's happening to them, which another part, which is really going on in terms of the spiritual realm. And again, the energy was using them as puppets, so so they can sacrifice people to the woods for hermits. From there we get part 3. We get to see the opening shot. That opening shot would later show on in the movie. I believe in some ways with what goes on is what we will see in the future. That this thing can now use technology to film something before it happens and have somebody discover it, so they go and be nosy and go inside the woods to see what they can find. We would also see something like this in part 1 of this game that I talked about. The woman would sleep. The things that she was doing was just a dream, but it would all come soon to be real life for her later on in the game, where she had to take down some of these zombies, or the people that turned into zombies in the town. So we do get the glimpse and the play of an idea of seeing the future. We also see the redneck guy being used as a puppet. We also get to see the house not appear and then appear because they fully got into the dimension, the portal. We get to see an alien-like creature, I do believe to be Heather, who was stretched out and tortured, to be used as a puppet to lure others into killing, to sacrifice. I do also believe, which also goes into where the witch comes in but doesn't come in. If we go back to part 2, we were seeing glimpses of the past when that woman was having those dreams. Ella, who got accused of being a witch, the children lied. They wanted her out of the village because they didn't like her. So she was wrongfully accused and killed for no reason, who was tied on a rack and stretched out. And I believe that's what happened to Heather, is that she didn't die, but she got disfigured, disformed, her soul being owned, and her spirit can no longer cross, or won't be able to cross until that creature can be killed. So I do believe what we saw in part 3 was definitely Heather, but as a monster. And when we heard her voice, I believe that was Heather trying to tell her brother, like, look man, you need to get out of here, this is what happens. But Hermex's power is so strong that he made Heather kill her own brother. I do believe we heard the brother's voice right before he was dying, trying to tell the girl that he was worth to get out of there. Which then also wraps this part up. I believe the house and what we see, again, is part of not just this dimension of this portal, but we hear what sounds like a hovercraft, a spaceship with those lights. A lot of this that points out within these games and movies definitely seems to be alien-like, to where I believe Hermex is a negative being from space, who combined it, again, with magic and science together, that caused the lore and the myths of all these things we see in the movies and in the game. So he played off that. He combined those two. From there, I say, what we want to see in part 4, if there is. I think in part 4, we may actually get how we can survive, which is to be blind. What we can see in terms of finding certain spiritual items that were actually alien technology to help fight the creatures. I believe once fighting the creatures, we would set a lot of the trapped souls and the tortured victims to be set free so they can cross over. From there, to destroy the house, which I believe may hold a cloaking device. Once we get that, I believe we might actually get Hermex, again a being from space who is evil, and we get to see the ship. And how we see that, how they may fight that. I believe once that happens, the town will see this. And I do also believe that if and when that will happen, if we do get a 4th film, I think we may get a time jump. I'm actually good with, like, okay, how long would it take for people to heal from that? I'm going to say about maybe 5 years at the most. So I can see there being a 5-year time jump at the end of the movie. again, this is just rough drafted. None of this is written down. So I'm going off the top of my head what I think may happen and what I would like to see if we ever got a fourth film. And also based off memory from the 3 movies, is that if we get a 5-year time jump, I do believe we'll get the town to be abandoned. I do believe we would get updated explorers, YouTubers. I believe we could get people to act like YouTubers who want to go explore these woods and say, well, I heard the stories about this place and this is what happened or this is what happened. Because over time, you know, stories become myth, legends, and so much is added onto it that you don't know which part to believe at times. And I do believe we would actually hit, which would actually tie in this to be actually the Blairwitch, is that Ella was so, was wrongfully accused of being a witch. Even with her being set free and everything that she has done because she was used, she wouldn't be able to rest. So I can see them having a shot being, okay, so I'm actually going to play off the story of me being a witch to look like a witch. And then we get the campers that hear something, then they see her in camera, and then it cuts to black. So I can actually see that in the end actually tying into being the Blairwitch. So at the end, I do believe what we're getting are actually aliens or a negative being of an alien named Herman, who plays with things over the years that he's been on Earth, molding his technology and magic together to play off these myths and lores and stories that we hear and see about, that ties this in together with it being an alien film. And in the end, I would like to see Ella, who was wrongfully accused of being a witch, her being used as a puppet, her not being able to rest and cross over to the other side and actually become a witch. So that way it would hold the title together of being the Blairwitch. With that being said, I'm out. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Peace.